From ABC News Radio, KMET 1490 in Southern California. This is BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio with your host, Tyler Jorgensen.
Welcome out to BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio. I'm your host, Tyler Jorgensen. And today we have the privilege of talking with and listening to the story of Zack Hurley, who is the co-founder and CEO of IndieSource.com. And these guys are kind of the behind the scenes from a lot of brands that you may have even seen and can help a lot of entrepreneurs bring their products and their brands to life. And so I'm really excited as somebody who has launched a lot of products to be able to have someone share their entrepreneurial journey and how they support other entrepreneurs. Super excited to have you out, Zack.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tyler.
All right, Zack, when was the first time in your life when you realized you're an entrepreneur?
Well, the funny thing is that I think I had it flipped where I did a lot of entrepreneurial things growing up that I had no idea were entrepreneurial.
Sure.
And I mentioned you this before when we were talking that it didn't really occur to me that being an entrepreneur was a possibility until I started reading, Tim Ferriss's stuff. And this is after I had already graduated from college and I was already sort of I had my first job. And it wasn't then until I realized holy crap, I've been doing this, number one.
Right.
And I can do this for like forever, and I don't have to have a boss, and I can actually make this a reality for me. It's sort of that made it okay for me to actually call it that, if that makes sense.
Totally. So if when was that first aha that you realized, man, you might be able to leave the 9-to-5 world, right? And go a different way. Was there a specific moment, or was it just kind of that general reading the 4-hour work week and embracing it? Or do you remember a moment where the light bulb went off?
Well, the light bulb went off specifically at a part of that book where he was talking about liberation, I think it might have been called. And I was like, holy crap. I was like, wait. So I was in a sales job and I'm reading, this is what you do. This is what you do. And it said step by step. But at that point, I had already really started the bones of IndieSource and started sort of making it happen. But I was kind of on the side. It was a side thing. I wasn't giving it attention. And I remember reading through this and then reading to the bottom where it's that final part where he says, you basically give them an ultimatum. If you're good enough, you kind of say hey, I'm going to be working remotely. And at that point, I had been doing so well in my job, in my sales position, that I was just I'm just going to skip to that part. And so I remember walking into my boss's office and being I'm moving to California. And I really want to keep working here and I would like to make this work. So, if you're willing to keep me on salary, I'd like to work remotely. And of course, then the superiors had to get involved and his boss. And they were well, we've never done this before. This doesn't happen, But eventually they were all right,
yeah,
do it. So that was huge because I was oh my God, I can't believe that worked. I was in DC at the time. I flew out and moved to Los Angeles and started this company with my buddy on a houseboat in the marina. And
love it.
That salary really helped me to get started.
Oh yeah, it's a big deal. So, all right, let's break the seal here. What is IndieSource and what do you guys do?
IndieSource helps fashion entrepreneurs to bring their ideas to life and then manufacture products at scale that they can, build their businesses around. And we primarily focus in apparel. Apparel is the main thing. And apparel could be everything from athletic wear to contemporary fashion. We do accessories. I do, headwear, anything that can be cut and sewn from fabric, which gives you a lot of choices at that point, can be made by our team.
Awesome. And so why did you decide, of all the things to create and build, right? Why was this the thing that you co-founded?
Well, I think like many things, you start to dig a little bit as you see opportunity. And in the beginning, you don't always know what that's going to look like. In the beginning, some of the aha moments that we felt were talking to brands at Magic, which is the trade show in Vegas, and learning about the challenges that they had creating custom apparel. And just being like, how come you're all printing on Gildan? You guys all look the same. Like, that's weird to me. We had the fortune of knowing and producing in out of Peru, because we had somebody that we met who made amazing Pima cotton shirts, and it was just so much better than the stuff we were seeing at the trade shows. So we were like, there's something going on here in this industry. And that was just the beginning where we were like, let's see. I think that there's an opportunity here, and you don't know in the beginning, but you know enough to keep going, and that's kind of where it all started.
Why were you even attending these kind of trade shows? Like what even got you into the fashion world, or what got you attending these types of things?
Yeah, so I think it starts by letting yourself be an entrepreneur and saying, yes, I'm going to look for opportunities. And that's step number one. Step number two is expanding and working with people in your network that have these opportunities. And so a friend of mine who I went to college with, and we created a fraternity together, and I trust, like, with my life, he hit me up at some point and was like, I have this other friend who's in Peru, and he's been down there. And so the connection came through a friend of a friend. And that was it. That was all it took. It was like, ooh, opportunity. And, I studied international business marketing in Spanish. So I was like, shoot, this would be like a dream thing for me.
Nice lineup.
Like that's exactly the kind of thing I want to do. So I was like, I'm going to follow that. And that was how it got to there. And what sort of got us to this trade show was that the guy who owned the factory was like, I need your help getting my product into the US market. So we were running his sales for him, getting his product from Peru into the US market. And that's where we sort of like saw what was going on in the industry. So now we're like in the industry. Wow, we can start asking questions. We can start learning, and we can start seeing, well, what's going on with this industry? We come to find out it's a disaster. I mean, it's completely archaic. It's so confusing. It's really only set up for bigger brands to be successful. Yet you have tens of thousands of entrepreneurs that now, because the barrier to entry is lower and they can directly market to their customers, they want to. But the back end is still like just terribly archaic and isn't set up to help them. And that was that sort of contrast. And we were like, oh man, this is a huge opportunity because of how bad it is.
Yeah. So I love that. So how similar is starting a business to starting a new fraternity?
It's eerily similar.
So I mean, is this the same person? Is that your co-founder?
Yep. Yeah.
So like, did you know by working together in that relationship, like, oh, we could run a business together?
I mean, think about it this way. We had like 50 guys that we had to somehow convince to do community service, to get certain GPA, to just do like an inordinate amount of stuff that was not partying and drinking, and we couldn't even pay them. So it's like that was exactly the aha moment. It was like, dude, if we can rally these people around an idea of being a founding father and building a legacy, and doing something bigger than ourselves that will hopefully last for years and years to come. If we can do that and we don't pay them anything, and this works, like we could start a business for sure. So that was definitely directly related to it. And the fraternity exists. They have a house. It was a terrible. They barely know the stuff that I went through to fighting with the school. I mean, it was very difficult to even for them to let us be on campus. It was a whole thing, and it took 4 years. But now they have it.
Yep,
it's there. So
I love that.
Yeah, I would say a lot of similarities there.
So with your current team, do you do hazing? Do people have to have like a senior, brother and all that kind of stuff? Or
we actually don't. One of the things, we were the anti-fraternity, so we really didn't do hazing at all. It was similar. I always laugh about it because old school is kind of similar. It's like these are just like a bunch of people that don't even want to be in a fraternity that are creating a fraternity. Right. And it was really like that. And part of our DNA was we don't think that hazing is the way to go, but we do obviously lots of bonding and things like that to get people together. But yeah, I mean, some of those kinds of things obviously can translate into business.
Yeah. So from the more positive side, like how do you, now that your team is growing, you've got a good company, like how do you make sure you build good morale, good team spirit within your business?
They got to understand the why. They got to understand what's going on. And today's the 3rd. I mean, the first of the month, or I guess this was just yesterday, we had an all-team meeting with everybody. We're about 35 people right now, just our direct core team. And then there's a lot of other people that are a part of the organization outside of that. But the way to do it is to make sure that every single person on the team feels empowered to be an entrepreneur, or I call an intrapreneur, in the organization. And so that's been the most critical thing, because one of the things that you sort of realize, and I've realized going through like waves of running companies, is that when you have a bunch of people that are thinking the way you do, it's just so much easier. When you have a team of employees and they're doing what you tell them to do, it's impossible. So threading the line between those two things is a huge opportunity. And it starts by giving them the keys to be able to drive something on their end, you know?
Right.
So that's what I've seen to be impactful recently.
I love that. So give me a case study of a brand that you guys have helped. Kind of what was the idea that they had, you know, where were they stuck, and how did you guys help them make it a reality and take it to market? Not either specific or general.
Sure. I mean, and there's different categories. I would say what's interesting about our business is that we get people from all categories, including, you know, like medical and inventions. And then we also get people from all stages. So sometimes they're really in invention stage. Like they have just a concept and it's never been made before. And it like literally doesn't even exist. Like we made like an anti-gravity suit for somebody. Somebody wants to make certain jackets that are like protect you from bullets. Like people have crazy ideas. And then sometimes people just want to make leggings and athletic lines. And then on the other side of it, we have brands that are in sort of like growth mode. They're scaling. They don't really need us to help them invent anything, but they need us to help get them to the next level. And so we support them on that. And typically the way that it works is that people will come in, they bring inspiration and things that they have, you know, anything that would be relevant to share their idea. And we kind of like get it out all on the table and do a big, you know, kickoff meeting so that they can kind of like explain, hey, is this possible? Is this something that really works? And then from there, we put together like an actual plan, and we go through the process of sourcing all of the materials. They approve everything. We make patterns, which is the engineered two-dimensional shape of a garment that then gets cut out of fabric and then sewn together. And so the process of product development is one that I think is always overlooked in this industry. And so it's fun to work with people on this really critical part of actually giving it time and attention to build something that doesn't exist.
Super cool.
I'll give you one example that I always like to use, which is Rod Carew is a famous baseball Hall of Famer. So he has a heart condition, and he has it's a certain kind of medical equipment that he needs to carry in it. And so we developed this shirt that has these different straps and things that you can put all around the shirt. It's like an athletic mesh material. And so that was an example of a functional product built around a need for that particular niche. And so what you'll notice if you look at my clients list is that they're very niched. They all do a very specific like sort of thing that they are making because they might feel underserved or left out of the market. So they're building something. They're building something to fit that need that they haven't seen.
I love that, man. It's and in your ability to help them, like you said, come and just drop it all on the table, say, here's the ideas, like what can we do? Really cool to be able to help people take an idea to a reality. What are some people just getting started? Let's say, what do people need to know about the creation and manufacturing process? What do you find yourself having to constantly teach new clients?
The first thing is the stages of developing something, because most of the time people come to me with an idea and they say, how long is production? And production is like the last part.
Right.
And so understanding and it's tricky, right? Because, and I wouldn't say this is very good in terms of our business model, because step one is I have to tell them that this other thing exists called product development. And then I have to tell them they have to pay for it. So It's not always the easiest thing. But in the end, it is something that they do get once they realize, oh, okay, we have to source fabric, we have to build and engineer the process, we have to put together costing in the financials to make sure that there's a margin for the product up front and early, so that we're not just like guessing at what your margin is going to be. So we're blending together the process of creating a prototype, making it financially viable, and giving them an experience at the same time. That's really the magic.
So walk through making it financially viable. What does that mean?
Well, that means that we're starting from the way to do it is to start from the retail price point.
Okay.
And rather than start from cost. A lot of times what people do is they say, well, what does it cost? This is a huge piece of advice too. What does it cost? They go around and start asking people, how much does it cost? How much does it cost? How much does it cost? And the problem with that is it's not pegged to the retail price point, which is what the market's willing to pay.
Correct.
And so instead, the way to figure out all of this is to first do research on market viability and what you want to sell it for. And you can create some assumptions. You say, all right, I think that this thing that we would make, I could sell for this amount of money. You look at other brands, you see what they're selling it for that are similar, and yours can be above or below based on whether yours is going to be better or worse. I try to tell people to not compare themselves to Nike or any big brands because the economics that they're dealing with are totally different. So you want to look at other indie brands and compare yourself to them because the economics are going to be a lot more similar.
Yep.
Once that's done, then you need to create a margin for yourself. And so that margin is going to be based on your business model. Now, the cool thing about a lot of direct-to-consumer brands now is they basically have like no overhead.
Right.
Which is good, but they typically replace that overhead that they would have with more marketing spend to acquire the customer. So they need to determine what that margin they want to be, and then also build a plan for how much they're going to spend on marketing as well. And so that's just giving yourself a target. So for simple math, if it's $100, we might say, all right, well, we want to make this thing for $25 all in. And that includes the labor and the materials. So now you have a target, you have a goal. You know, all right, I want to make this for $25 and I'm willing to do this many units. Because the other part of the variable, I know we're nerding out a little bit on the numbers, but the other part of the variable is how many units are you willing to do? And the question that every entrepreneur has to ask themselves in the beginning is, would I rather make more units at a lower price point but expose myself to inventory risk? Or would I rather make less units at a higher price point and now I won't make as much money, but I'll at least be able to validate the product in the market. And then from there, I make 300 instead of 1,000. And that way, I won't be stuck with inventory if it doesn't sell. It's a decision every entrepreneur has to make. And I'm sure you probably have dealt with that too, right?
Oh, yeah. Every product launch, right? You got to go through that concept and the answer isn't uniform, right? It's based on the risk, the finances, the capital, the model, do they have, if it doesn't work in their first place that they go to sell the product, do they have an alternative distribution channel? All those kinds of things, right? And so all of those factors have to come into play. What is one brand out there in the market that you think is totally overrated? Like, man, they charge a lot of money for a product that's just okay in the apparel space.
I don't want to call it one brand, but I think that my answer is always around the mainstream brands that you see kind of trying to outfit the general, the general consumer. And that's problematic to me. I mean, and that's sort of like what we're fighting against, because if you look at the industry, and I mean, this is all changing, but when we were younger, we go to the mall, right? And we'd go to the department stores and there would be these brands and they would kind of not really fit, but they would kind of fit and they were like, whatever. And so a lot of these brands have been designed from day one to fit the masses all right, just enough so that they're like, all right. But what that does is it makes people feel like, this is kind of crap. The quality isn't very good. It's mass produced. It's such a scale. And so that happens with almost every major billion-dollar brand is what I see issues in the market.
Gotcha.
And so the transition is to more brands, more entrepreneurs that are coming in and making products that are better quality and having a direct relationship with their customer rather than just producing tons of product, destroying the planet and dominating the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a different conversation.
Sure. It's almost like we went from like Main Street USA, the small local shops that were either custom tailoring or small batch ordering, to we went to department store, mall, where everything's just mass market manufactured. And now that we're going digital, we're seeing the rise of the small brands again. Right.
Exactly.
So it's like Main Street USA is coming back, but they're online and it's a different experience. And
it's fun. It's really fun to see that, because you feel like, damn, look at all these people like doing it right and like building something that people actually need, and like the ones that do something that they're probably gonna not succeed, and that's obviously part of the game. But the accessibility now that anybody has to have an idea, to get it out there and to make it happen and test is just, it's so cool that anybody can do it now. It wasn't the case before. It was very difficult to get in. You had to invest over $1 million. You had to have sales reps all around the country selling to stores. It's just the business model is totally different now.
Yeah, the decrease in the barrier to entry is really exciting for anyone who's wanting to get into apparel or wanting to get into e-commerce, and because you can test stuff out, right, with a very low risk. It's not zero risk, right? You're not.
No, it's a product business.
It's not the same as print on demand, drop shipping, or something like that. This is definitely, you're actually building a brand. You're taking care of. You're bringing an idea to life, which is really cool. And you wouldn't take my bait on which brands you were going to throw under the bus. Appreciate that. Was really excited for you to toss a couple, but we're all right. What? Let's go back to kind of like as Zack got into transitioning from employee into business owner. What was what's a major obstacle that you've had to overcome? And it might even be recent in your business. And how'd you guys overcome it?
So many, so many obstacles at so many different points. I think I face the obstacle that many entrepreneurs that are scaling face, which is just giving a level of like true autonomy to leaders in the organization. So basically what happened with our company, and I think it's kind of cool to explain this because this was definitely a vulnerability that happened to us. In the beginning, we grew pretty quickly, and 2016 up to 2016, we had an amazing year. We crushed it. And I made a mistake where I had too many people on the fulfillment side of the business, but not enough on sales.
Right.
And so I didn't have the scale balance properly. And so we had a huge issue there. And so that took me, that ruined my next 2 years. Didn't ruin it, but we didn't make as much, right? And so we had to sort of rebuild and set the scale. And so now we're in a place where we have the team, but I think what's been exciting to do is now actually give the keys to the people in the departments and let them really run the show. And so right now, for example, we're bringing in heads of product development, head of manufacturing, head of the marketing department, and actually getting from the point where it's just me and my co-founder managing many individual contributors versus having managers that are in between us to support the growth and the ultimate vision of the company. And that's been really hard because I think, anybody that's built a company, like over $1 million, I guess,
sure,
it's hard to justify, I'm going to pay a manager this extra salary, but they won't actually have output. They're just going to manage other people. And
it's tough. Yeah. It's a big shift when it's not a direct ROI. You're working on things like return on time, or you're looking it's less, in the early stage of your business, over almost every team member has a direct ROI, right?
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Yeah, it's a big change. But it's allowed you to kind of step back higher up and really be
it's so huge, man.
Owner.
I can't even tell you. And we're just really getting to that solidification of it because it takes a while to get you there. But now exactly, it's we're having these people in these seats and also letting them make important decisions about what's best for them and the whole group.
Right.
It's just all good. And it's going to mean that we're now on that next level of being able to grow and make sure that everybody in the company feels supported by their manager and the directors above them. And so that's been a challenge though. For sure, it hasn't been linear. It's been all over the place. And I think putting people in seats that really have that leadership and want to solve problems genuinely and not do things the way they've always done is the solution. And because I've also hired people that are this is how it is in the industry. And I'm no, I know that, but I don't want to do it that way. That's the problem. It's been like that in the industry, but this industry has a lot of terrible things going on with it. I actually want to do the opposite as much as possible. And so I've made the mistake of hiring people that are qualified, but they're so ingrained in the way things have been that they're not really interested in going against the grain. And so the hiring process of just looking for those people that are really willing to push the limits and do it different, it has been, I think, the thing that is pulling us out after this.
So there's a difference between being qualified and being a good fit, right? And I think it's finding the blend. When we're hiring, a lot of times I'll take someone slightly less qualified if they're the right culture fit, and then we can I can train, right? We can build up, but if they're not
Exactly.
going to fit, that's just going to be, fighting against it the whole time. Man, I'm a big believer in lifestyle design, right? Since we started the call talking about 4-hour work week, and it sounds like you're making a lot of those big moves where the business is built for you, right? And not just to have a job, but to be able to build a lifestyle. What's one major item on Zack Hurley's personal bucket list that you're going to accomplish in the next 12 months?
Well, this has been a big one. So we're going through some really transformational leadership processes. And so basically the structure is one that does lend itself to me being able to take myself out of the weeds. And this is something every entrepreneur deals with. And so basically now I feel we have the team, and the next thing over the next 12 months is building the process out from a leadership perspective and a management perspective, so that each person there in that group, there's like 7 of them, all are like, they feel they're mini CEOs of what they're doing. And so over the next 12 months, I want to build them up, empower them, create, there's a lot of analytics behind it in terms of making sure we're doing good by our clients and we're, in a position to scale further. So over the next 12 months, it's really creating a foundation for them to be successful. That's my priority. And what does that mean for me? It means that then I can take a step back, obviously like have conversations like this, but also spend more time with my family. I have an 8-month-old, who was born right when Corona hit. And so getting more time with him is important to me. Yep. And so these are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about like over the next 12 months.
Awesome. So like a true entrepreneur, your personal answer always starts with business and then ends with so that I can have more time with my family, right? Which is cool. What is your absolute dream client?
Oh, that's so great. Someone just asked me that recently. So my dream client, I start by saying what my dream client or what my worst client is.
Okay, deal.
So the worst client is somebody who comes in, doesn't actually know anything about the process, and is extremely demanding about, getting things done with no empathy or understanding of like, hey, what do you have to do to make it, right? People say like, oh, a sample, that should be done in 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, tell me how you would do that. Like, what would you do? And they don't know. And so when I look at what kind of client we want, part of, as it always needs to be introspective, but part of it is somebody that is coming in, that has been educated, probably by us to some degree, at least by our marketing. I do a lot of educational stuff and a lot of, pre-funnel, like top funnel, like, hey, before you even consider talking to us, like, here's some stuff that really matters. I put out so much content around that because I know it's just not even out there usually. So I don't expect everybody to know the answer. But somebody that comes in with a true desire to be successful, with a willingness to listen and partner with us, rather than, it's not a transactional thing. Like we're going in the weeds, baby. Like we're going to have to really, like we're grinding together. This is not easy. We're building a product that doesn't even exist. We're making something that doesn't even exist. So our best clients are ones that like, they're rolling up their sleeves. They're like, all right, let's do this thing. Like we're going to deal with the dye house that is having a color issue. We're going to deal with this fabric vendor that shipped us too many yards. Like the apparel industry is extremely fragmented.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, we're not selling a product. We sell a team of people that are exceptionally good at what they do. And the outcome is a product. And we will always do our best to manage this crazy supply chain, but it's always going to be many people involved to get to the end result.
Yep, totally agree. All right, guys, I hope that gave you a little bit of an insight into what is possible in the manufacturing space, what you could do in the apparel space, a little bit of Zack's journey. Please go check him out at IndieSource.com. And now it's your turn to go out and do something.
Thank you for listening to BizNinja Entrepreneur Radio with Tyler Jorgensen. Please make sure to subscribe so you're first to hear new interviews and episodes. If you found this podcast to be valuable, please share it with a friend. Don't forget to visit our online dojo at BizNinja.com to claim your reward for listening to the show.